Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hope Soaps. I am your goat soaper angel, and today we are going to be working on a design method called the Hanger Swirl. And we'll be using my base formula and a fragrance oil from Brambleberry that's called Cactus Flower. So let's get started. So what I started out by doing is taking my frozen goat milk and breaking it up uh, and adding it into my container so that I can use the full frozen goat milk as my lye solution. Whereas in my previous videos, I didn't use fully frozen goat milk, and that actually scorched the milk. And if you want to see how those soaps turned out, go ahead and check out my other videos. And just so you know, they turned out well. They just didn't have a great smell initially. So now that I've got my frozen goat milk measured out, I'm going ahead and adding or measuring out my sodium hydroxide, or the actual lye, the caustic part of the lye solution. So anytime you're using sodium hydroxide and making a lye solution, it is very important that you use all of your safety gear. So long sleeves, gloves, closed-toed shoes, long pants, and goggles. So definitely make sure that you have that, and I will do a video about lye safety here in the not too distant future. And what you'll notice now is that I'm adding in the sodium hydroxide in small amounts to make this lye solution, okay? Because if you pour it all in at once, it's going to do exactly what it did in my previous videos and scorch the milk. So add it in small amounts, and we jumped ahead here to when I finished mixing those up, and you'll see that there is still some slight discoloration in that it turned it yellow, but it is not orange and scorched like my previous batches were. Okay, you'll see that by the time I finished, the temperature of the lye was 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I'm jumping into preparing my hard butters, and starting out with my cocoa butter. Okay, I decided today to use an ice pick. Since the pieces that I had left in there were big, and I wanted to break these into smaller pieces so they would melt more easily. Also, who doesn't need a good reason to use an ice pick? So now that I got that done, I'm getting my shea butter out and disappearing so I can go get a knife to cut this. Of course, shea butter is significantly softer than cocoa butter, so cutting this was a little more easy, and I'm just breaking up into smaller pieces for that same reason. I want it to be able to melt easily and not take forever, so that I don't actually burn the butters, because burning any of your ingredients is a bad idea. Okay, so I set that aside, and now I've got another cup available for my coconut oils. So I go and I grab a spoon and start scooping that into this cup so that I can have all of it measured out. And then once I melt all of these down, I'll mix them all together, since they will all be able to fit into one cup. Okay, so now that those are melting down, I'm jumping into my actual oils. So, adding in some avocado oil, which I haven't really used in many of my recipes. So, I figured since I was doing some swirls, I'd do some extra liquid oils, and avocado oil is supposed to be really good. I also wanted to go ahead and try some of this sweet almond oil, which I have never used before, and that sounded like a really good option as well. So, adding that in. Of course, we also have to go ahead and get the castor oil going, and one day I am going to get an actual different and more user-friendly castor oil bottle. These guys, again, are super overpriced since they're from the cosmetic aisle at Walmart. And you can't do a soap without the staple olive oil. Well, I guess you actually can do a soap without olive oil if you wanted to. But olive oil is such a staple in soap making, and it is super helpful, especially when you're trying to do designs, because it helps the soap to stay soft. Okay, so here we go. We're mixing in all of our oils. This is my liquid oils getting poured into my larger mixing bowl, and then I'm going to check the temperature of my hard butters and oils, and everything looks pretty good. They're still a little warm, so I mix them in with the liquids. That way it'll help to cool them off, and of course making sure that we scrape every last bit that we can out of our containers. And checking my temperature of my oil combo there, it is 92.5 degrees, which is still a little warm for soaping, so I waited a few hours. I went ahead and added in some kaolin clay. I added 2 teaspoons to this, and then I'm going to go ahead and just mix all of that in together. That way it's nicely blended for when the lye solution gets added. Okay, so here we are getting ready, and we are adding in the lye solution with 100% goat milk. So as it was continuing to blend there, it did turn a little more orange, but it didn't have that scorched smell from the previous batches, which I got too hot too fast. And you'll see that as I'm putting this through my with my stick blender, that it's starting to clump up. My soap batter is not acting the way I want it to, and so instead of freaking out and throwing the whole batch away, I went ahead and I just stopped with the stick blender and used my spatula to kind of stir things around and kind of try to slow down the process here. I went back in with my stick blender to get it to emulsion into a lighter trace, and it seemed to do the trick. I think it was just kind of just acting up a little bit. For all of you that are experienced soap makers, maybe you can put down in the comments what it is actually that would have caused that. And now I'm just going to go ahead and divide up my soap batter into 3 different containers so that I can make my layers for the hanger swirl. And I just kind of eyeballed how much I was adding to each one, because I did want them to be fairly equal in amounts, and I don't know that I quite got it right, but I just eyeballed it. I didn't really have a set amount that I wanted for each one. And of course, now I'm adding in my fragrance oils to each one, and I usually want to show you guys what I'm using, but that is, of course, the cactus flower fragrance from Brambleberry, and it is a really awesome kind of floral and fruity smell at the same time. It's actually really nice. And I'm sure you hear this on other sub channels too, but if you could smell what I'm smelling on this side of the camera, it is amazing. So the first mica that I'm using is Angry Rose from Mad Micas, and that, when I put it in the batter, it looked like it was going to have more of a glittery sheen to it. I'm glad that it didn't, but it actually turned out really well in the end, as you'll see. And then the other one I'll show you was the rest of the Tangerine Dream from Mad Micas as well, and Enchanted Forest. These were the sample packs, the trial packs that I got from them, just so I could try them out, see which ones I like. I got a whole bunch of them because I wanted to see, like, how do these colors actually turn out in my soaps. And so I just go ahead and I whisk them all in together just to get the start of the blend going there. And the Tangerine Dream looks really, really bright right now, but I will show you at the end what it actually turns out to look like. The Angry Rose looks really good, a kind of purpley red color, and I really like how that turned out. So here we go. I get my stick blender, and I want to make sure that this is all really well blended. I don't want like blotchy spots in my soaps. So I take the stick blender and I kind of stir it around a little bit, make sure that it's turning out okay and that it's mixed well. And I do that with all three of my batch. With all three of my colors, I mean. And of course, if anything's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So I went back through with my whisk and blended it all up again. And as you can see a little bit there, my orange is already starting to thicken up more than I should have. I went ahead and poured it into my mold, starting with my green layer, and I started pouring that over the spatula to help kind of reduce air bubbles and get it smoothly across the bottom, and scraped out everything to make sure that I got as much of that green bottom layer as I could. I wanted that to kind of be the cactus part of the cactus flower. So I go in with my orange, and of course you can see that's looking a little thick, a little thicker than we want it for a hanger swirl. For a hanger swirl, you know, this would be my first time trying it, but from every tutorial that I've seen and read, it should be at a more of a medium light trace. But this was actually more of a medium thick trace. My other colors were actually more along the lines of what I wanted them to be. The Angry Rose, as you can see, really has a wonderful purple color now that it's been kind of sitting there, and I think it turned out really great at the very end, whenever everything had finished saponifying. So here I am, just getting those 3 layers in, and I take my hanger out, which is, yes, a literal wire hanger that I cut and measured so that it'll fit into my mold, and I just kind of do a simple infinity pattern from the bottom to the top. I go in from the middle and come up slowly doing an infinity pattern, and then I go down through the sides, down one side and up the other, just to make sure that I've got at least a decent looking swirl going there on the inside, or so I hope anyway. I take the rest of the orange and just layer it up on top because I want to do a little sculpting and just kind of pretty it up a little bit. All right, and here I get my trusty dusty spoon. Okay, so it's not dusty, thankfully, because that would be gross to actually make a soap with a dusty spoon. But I take my spoon and I want to do a simple sculpting over the top of it. So I just take it and I run the back end over it and just kind of make some nice little peaks here. I want to make a peak in the middle and just nothing too terribly fancy, just to give it a little design, to kind of help that orange on top have a little extra oomph to it, I guess. So now I've got that done, I'm just kind of cleaning off the edges of my mold there, and voila. And as always, we are magically transported to 2 days later, where this has been sitting in my refrigerator to prevent gelling. And I also didn't want it to crack on the top. I had 2 soaps that cracked on top, and I didn't think that that would be a good idea to continue to have that happen. So I put this bad boy in the refrigerator for a couple of days to prevent the gel phase while it finished saponifying, and I think the colors turned out great. They're not super vibrant, which is fine, because I was really hoping for more of an earthy kind of look to it. And my wife was like, yeah, those are really kind of more Arizona-y looking colors. So she actually loves the way it turned out. But I want to show you guys how this turned out on the inside, right? I want to see how this swirl actually turned out once we cut it, because again, this was my first attempt at a hanger swirl. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go, since the batter thickened up more than I wanted it to. But here we go with our first cut. Okay, so first cut is here, and I actually was really surprised at how it turned out. Okay, so this isn't the ideal hanger swirl, right? Like, if anyone has seen a legitimate hanger swirl, it's actually the swirls are more defined and very wispy. This one didn't have that, but it still turned out really well because the layers are broken up and they kind of wave together a little bit. So I think that it turned out well either way, even though it wasn't really what I was aiming for, right? It wasn't what I was shooting for, but it turned out really awesome. So I'm finishing cutting all of this up, and I'm thinking this is still a really good soap. It's got some really great moisturizing capabilities, and I just think it's awesome. So this is my last piece, and here is my lather test. So you'll see that this actually does create some really awesome bubbles. I kind of shaved off a piece of the back end, that way I could use it for this, and wonderful bubbles. So if you like making soap or want to see more of this, definitely check out some of my other videos. I appreciate you guys being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.